Hi, and welcome to another episode of the ChangeMakers. In this chat show, we talk to marketing and product leaders from consumer brands, and we will be talking about interesting ways in which consumer behavior is evolving. And we will also hear about real life examples of how technology is being used by brands to sort of influence the kind of interactions and engagement they have with consumers. And with that, let me introduce our guest, Isha. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Let's start with a round of introduction. Just a little bit about you and your background, and then what got you into where you are right now.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Really excited. So I'm, as you mentioned, you talk to product leaders. So I'm one of those product leaders. I work with Disney Plus Hotstar, where I head the search, security, and app platform side. What that means is that me and my team, whenever you search for something on Hotstar, it's our job to make sure that we understand what you're searching for and we fetch it for you. As part of security, I make sure that you're not pirating any of our content and there's no unauthorized account sharing happening. So if you or your family is doing that, know that I'm on your tail. Performant and best in class across all OTT apps. That means starting up super fast, no lags, no jank, no crashes, and just having a super performant, smooth app for our customers.
So your team is the one behind when I log into Hotstar or Disney Hotstar and I see, oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted to watch. That's you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think I've been with Hotstar now for 3 years, but I've been into product management for almost a decade. And I've been lucky to have done it across a spectrum of B2B as well as consumer, and like India, US, startup, big tech, just been across the spectrum. And it's been a great ride so far. I think the kind of challenges that you see, say, at an Amazon versus at an Ola are very different. The kind of learnings that I've had at, say, a Hotstar versus an Oyo have also been very different and very, very valuable. So great journey so far. And I'm excited to continue on it.
Awesome. And then what sort of got you into product management?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'm afraid I might not have a very exciting answer. So I remember I started this whole career journey with Oyo. And at that point, it wasn't really called a product manager.
When was this?
This was 10 years ago.
Okay.
Right. So, and I think it was just, it was called some associate, some kind of a role. It just didn't have product manager in it. But what I was essentially doing was being a bridge between the engineering team, our customer, and the business teams, right? And I really enjoyed doing that. And whatever I had to do to make all of these three teams come together and build something for our customer, I did that. And I think a year later, they realized, I think this is what a product manager does, and let's just call it that. And I was like, okay, this is something I enjoy, and maybe I'll build a career out of it. So that's how it happened.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And and when we talk about product management, right, I think in the grand scale of things, it's still a bit of a nascent function because marketing has been around for centuries. People have been doing sales for centuries. People have been doing finance for centuries. And then product management is probably a few decades old, or maybe 2 or 3 decades old, even globally.
I mean, I have such a tough time explaining to, say, like some of my older relatives, aunts and uncles, when they ask me what I do, and I tell them I'm a product manager. They're like, so you actually make the app or code it? I said, no, I don't do it. So you bring the money in? I was like, not really. What do you do?
You spend the money? No, that's marketing. That's not what I am. But yeah,
it's difficult. Yeah, it's still relatively new. I think.
Interesting.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Interesting. No, it's amazing. And when we talk about product management, right? I think there's a lot of sort of skill sets, a lot of sort of competencies that go into being a good or being a product manager.
Yeah.
And as with any function, there are certain areas where people are good at it, people are not good at it. And in your sort of case, what is your sort of superpower? What are the areas of product management which you are really good at, which you think you're good at, and then you personally really enjoy doing it?
Yeah, I think for me, the basic mode of being a product manager, which is, and I don't want to sound too much like Jeff Bezos or to kind of be very customer obsession and all that, but really understanding what your customer wants and then problem solving to find a solution for that. I think that to me is how I get the kick out of it. To explain that a little bit better, right? So understanding what your customer wants is a very big area where your customer is never going to come and tell you that, okay, please build me this XYZ next feature. They will just come to you with a feedback that, okay, you're too expensive, or your app doesn't work, or you don't have the content that I'm looking for. So using that feedback, and maybe I can just talk you through an example. I think in one of the interviews that I was doing with our customers, they just mentioned that, okay, the first time I installed your app, which is Hotstar, I didn't like what I saw and I dropped. And that was it. That was the one nugget of feedback I got. So I went back, I looked at the data we have, and I actually realized that our first time user journeys or first time or fresh installs, the conversions were very low. So there was value to what that customer was saying. So now all of this put together, you build a problem statement that how do I improve my first time user conversions, right? So that's the first part, which I really enjoy doing. And then the second part, now that you have the problem statement, build a solution for it. So what do you do next? And that's the second part, which is the problem solving and the brainstorming that goes behind all of this. And in this case, for example, we realized that we were showing the same homepage to everyone, whether it be a Hindi-speaking user, whether it be, say, someone who prefers horror, whether it be someone who's joining us from, Bangalore, for example. Everyone wouldn't have the same preferences, and if we show the same stale homepage or the same app to them, they would drop off. So the solution here was to personalize our homepage for them. And that's what I ended up building, and our conversions almost doubled after that. So yeah, so I think understanding that customer problem and then solving for it, that's what really I get excited about.
Interesting. And I think we've been like into 10 minutes into the conversation with a product leader, and we've not mentioned PRDs. So I think that's a good win. But sort of double clicking a little bit on this whole part of it, right? I think you mentioned about personalizing the first time a user or a customer sort of lands into the app, and you don't have a lot of information about the person or your customer at that point in time. So how did you sort of manage that? Right? I mean, because customer expects that the moment I walk in, you should be magically able to figure out what I want and just deliver that exactly, which may not exactly be, doable in a lot of cases as well. So how did you sort of, solve for that challenge? How did you go?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And also something that we struggled with, and also to, tweaked over it, over the solution over some time. But just to set some context first on how important personalization really is, right? And this is when I was also not aware, by the way. When I joined Hotstar, I thought, okay, the most watched content would probably be something like a Friends, or say an Office, The Office, or Modern Family, or some of these shows, Game of Thrones, maybe. But I was shocked to know it was something else. It was actually a show called Anupama, which is the most watched show in India right now, and we hosted. So that kind of really was a signal to me that the India that we live in it has so many different people, and you will never realize in your own bubble that just because whatever you are experiencing and the world you live in might not be the same world that someone else in India lives in, right? So think about, so there are so many Indias within one India, right? Think about an auto rickshaw driver who's watching something on his phone while he's driving. Think about a homemaker who just got done with her dinner for the family and now she's watching something on the phone. Think about a student who's traveling in a bus going to her college maybe and watching something, right? All of them, such different people, such different backgrounds, and of course, such different preferences in terms of what they want to watch. So personalization is important. Now, this coupled with the problem that customers now have a very short attention span, right? You are not the only app on this phone. And again, just for context, I can maybe share a few data points. Like in our case, we know that a majority of our customers don't even go past the first fold of our app, right?
This is when they first
land on the app, okay. Correct. And they don't go past the first fold. Another majority, we looked at our data that if we don't give them something meaningful to watch within the first 2 minutes, they will drop off and they might never come back, right? So all you have is like that 4-inch cross 2-inch screen, that small window, and a window of 2 minutes. That's when you have to wow them, and because if you don't, they will go away. Right. So you have 1.4 billion in our case, people, and such a small window to kind of encash. So if you don't get your personalization right, you will lose, right? And I think with that context, it's very important to know what parameters to use to personalize content for them. And it's not just that ideally, you'd want to know everything there is about them and build the perfect app for them. But that's not possible. So you need to kind of strike a balance between how much to collect first, personalize and get them to view something, and then maybe you can collect the rest of the information later.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
And then sort of talking about this data part of it, right? And you mentioned about, there's 1.4 billion of us, like from, hopefully babies are not watching Hotstar, but you never know. But
So we don't have Hotstar kids. We have Disney kids talking.
yeah. Oh yeah, it's Disney Hotstar. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's, just there's so many India, so many sort of mini regions, and then, and then you mentioned that. And then you also spoke about looking at data and sort of looking at problem statements and all of that. Like, can you talk about, a very sort of an unconventional or an unexpected insight that you looked at the data and you were like, okay, that was not what I was expecting, right? So any sort of, and I always like to ask this question because it sort of questions our own assumptions and biases that we have towards what we think are our consumers.
Right, yeah. It's going to be a little bit of a long answer here, Ashwin. So I think maybe to give you some context, right? One of the biggest personalization signals that we found was language, right? If you're a Hindi-speaking user, then the kind of shows we would recommend would be very different from a, say, Tamil or a Telugu-speaking user, right? And we realized that this would probably account for about 50 to 60% of your content preference, at least, for our personalization model. So when we were doing this, right, we also kind of had to geographically map these languages to different states in the country. And based on that, we would personalize our app, right? So if you're opening Hotstar for the very first time sitting in Delhi, you will see a different homepage because we would assume that you're a Hindi-speaking user. Versus if you open the app, say, in Chennai, we would show you a different homepage because you're probably a Tamil-speaking user. And this model worked for most states, except for one state, where it was a mix of all languages, all at once, all put together. And maybe I'll let you take a guess at what that state might be.
Okay, so there was a state where everyone was watching everything.
That's right.
And then
in all languages.
In all languages.
So we were kind of confused there. What do I tell? What do I tell my people?
There's real people or there's like some bots just watching. Okay, but I'll take a guess. Maharashtra, perhaps?
No, it's actually Karnataka.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think the Bangalore side maybe it's a truly cosmopolitan city and a state.
Or the other way to look at it is, Bangalore people watch everything. So they're either confused and they don't know what to watch, or they just watch everything. And so.
A lot of these insights that we uncovered then help us design our overall personalization model as recommendation. And maybe to take this further, right, you would not... It's sometimes we underestimate the level of personalization that really plays into some of our decisions as to what you want to watch. And then based on that, we personalize, of course, for example, the artwork that you see. So when you're opening the app and you see the title for the movie Stree, right? So maybe I might see the artwork that has only Shraddha Kapoor on it because I'm more likely to click on something maybe that has just a female lead on it, maybe. Whereas you might see something that has like the whole team on the artwork, right? So artwork personalization is one way that we do it. Another way we do it is the kind of call-outs that we have on the content. So before you watch something, you are browsing and there are various genres and call-outs on the content itself. So in your case, it might say for a movie like Friends Fail, in your case, it might say fans of Vikrant Massey also love this. In my case, it might say inspirational feel-good movie. So another level of personalization based on how much of a fan you are of Vikrant Massey or how I feel about the genre inspirational, right? And then, of course, the obvious one, which is the ordering of the plays or the content within the homepage itself is also very personalized. So for me, action movies might rank up higher. For someone else, romantic might rank up higher. And all of this is just driven by large ML models, which are just deciding on the go as to what layout, what homepage, what content to serve to you. What to hide.
It's very interesting, and sounds like, behind the scenes there's a lot of sophistication, a lot of scale, a lot of sort of processing at scale, and sort of crunching this data, and then and actually automating a lot of the
Yes.
Personalization parts of it. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with, right? I think a lot of people understand what good personalization or great personalization should look like, but they struggle to get there, right? For whatever reasons. Can you talk a little bit about what were some of the challenges that you faced, and then sort of getting to this level
Yeah.
of sophistication and maturity? And then how did you sort of overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, no, I think that is a great question, because this was not, by the way, like a 2 month thing. This kind of sophistication has evolved over at least 3 years, right? And I think the biggest challenge we had was how much information to collect before you serve a personalized experience to the user, because it's a fine balance between asking the user to go through multiple onboarding steps and not having them drop off, while also making sure that you're giving them something that is relevant. Right. If you have 10 steps where you're going to ask them everything under the sun, they will not finish that and they will drop off. But if you don't ask them anything and you immediately just give them a stale standard homepage, then also they will drop off. So what is that, that unique, I guess, that number or that point in the timeline of that customer where you should say, okay, I'm done with collecting information. Let me now just give them the experience, right? So in our case, for example, we internally, actually, we had a terminology called the aha moment, where we say that we need to make sure that the customer reaches the aha moment on our app as soon as possible, and we're not going to ask anything before that. So by aha moment, I essentially we define it like it's that moment in the app when your customer is like, this is the value I was looking for, right? This is what I came here for. So like in the case of Amazon, maybe it is your first purchase. Maybe that's an aha moment. In our case, it is the first video that you watch, right?
And then you come.
And you, in our case, not really complete, but like a meaningful watch. So say like an example, some ratio where we're doing like, okay, if you watch 60%, that's a aha moment for us. And now, we want you to reach that aha moment as soon as possible, and we will make sure that there are no disturbances, no information collection, nothing before that. So we only ask your location and your language, and then when we give you that personalized experience, at least for the first time use.
Got it. And then that's an interesting one, right? Because I get apps which ask all of these questions, right? Which is like, hey, how are you feeling now, right? Like, what sort of content do you want? I'm like, watch horror now, right? And if you ask me in the morning, I don't want to watch horror movies at like 8:30 in the morning, right? I'm not that weird, but but I think it's interesting the way you looked at it and said, what is the minimum amount of information that I can collect, which can possibly cover as many sort of these circumstances for personalization as much as possible. Amazing. And then you've had about a decade or more than a decade sort of journey in product management. You've seen multiple products, you've owned multiple products, you've managed multiple products. Personally, for you, what has been the most satisfying or most fulfilling, or something that you're really project that you're really proud of?
So this one might not be big on the numbers or big on the AUs, user count and all of that, but I think it's very close to my heart. So this is when I built an oxygen cylinder delivery product when I was at Ola. And
this was for COVID?
This was during the COVID.
Okay.
Exactly. So when, the whole country was struggling with the pandemic.
This was the first wave, 2020?
This is the second wave.
So, okay.
When there was big shortage of
oxygen. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right?
The Delta wave. Yeah.
Correct. And this is my first day at Ola. I joined and... So, yeah, you know the context, like the country was really under a shortage of oxygen cylinders. And while Ola cabs were not working at that point, but Bhavish calls me and says that, we need to do something about it. First day, after you show me what you've got. So, it was definitely a very time-sensitive project. And then I'm happy to say that things actually worked out well in that sense. And so we had a tie-up with an NGO called Give India, which gave us about 2,000 oxygen cylinders for use. And I I think in a day or maybe like 2 days, I pretty much designed the whole product journey, all the brainstorming, wherein we decided that we will have our Ola drivers deliver these oxygen cylinders to people who need, and then once they're done with the use, we will bring them back. So 2 days of PRD writing was
What? This is
PRD.
yeah.
In this case, 2 days of essentially the product design, and then 4 days of the engineering team coding it into the main Ola app. And then we were live in a week. And while I know it sounds a little bit similar, or it was just a basic delivery product, but there were so many. Given the context, there were so many things we had to take care of. Like, I'll tell you one thing that I had to be sure of was that we had to be 100%. We had to essentially make sure that there was nothing wrong in the app and the journey. Because imagine you're someone in the shoes of a customer who's used the Ola app to ask for an oxygen cylinder, and it's almost like a matter of life and death, right? And if something goes wrong in your app at that point, or your app is not, the journey kind of fails on some edge case, imagine what the customer will go through, and right, you've basically scarred that person for life. So I actually, the land operations, the QA part of it, I made sure that I was overseeing it. And then the second part to it was also that usually now if you order food, right, when there's a food delivery, you get notifications on your phone and you kind of track it from there. But in this case, I knew that having a notification setup would not be the right thing to do. We needed to have some human element to it. So I set up a team of about 4 agents who would manage the calls on this. So every time the cylinder is out for delivery or any notification, it would be a person on the other end, human actually talking to you, telling you, the cylinder is on its way. It will reach in 1 hour, and communicating with you so that the customer is at ease. And then finally, I think the third thing that was also most important at that point was we also had to have a very strong verification process because there were a lot of orders who would kind of take cylinders, sell it at a premium. And so, making sure that we're not collecting too much information from the customers to, which would annoy them, but also making sure that it's a valid request. So what kind of medical certificates and IDs to ask for before we say that, okay, this is a genuine delivery cylinder. All of those things had to be put into the product on the app in a week. So, and I think by the end of it, so we ended up delivering about 2,000 cylinders to people in need, all within a 4-hour SLA of delivery, which was, I think, really, really amazing. So, it just doing that at such a sensitive time was very, very rewarding. And to me, it was one of the the proudest moments for my professional career. So now I know maybe a little bit of how doctors feel every day. But that was, that's one of my proudest products.
That's amazing. I think, as you rightly pointed out, in a lot of cases, I think the sense of fulfillment is not always something that's measured with big numbers, whether it's bank balances or revenue, or whatever it is. And and then you might say that it was just 2,000 cylinders, but that's 2,000 lives that are being saved, that you've helped and made a positive difference. Or even though they may not know who the product manager was. But I think that's an amazing story. And that's something that like you should be rightfully proud of. Now let's talk a little bit about because your job is sort of in that interesting intersection of privacy and personalization, right? And in a lot of organizations, these two functions are different and they fight each other, right? Now, in your case, you handle both the functions, right? So conflicts are probably easier to resolve, but but let's talk a little bit about how do you sort of see this, privacy versus personalization dynamic. How do you sort of stay sensitive to the fact, or how do you sort of reconcile or balance that conflicting sort of goals in your own head and in your own team as well, right? Because sometimes it might be easy to say that, hey, my boss really cares about privacy, right? And that's a clear-cut direction for the rest of the team. And like, oh, my boss cares about privacy, personalization. That's sort of a clear-cut directive for the team. And how do you sort of balance that? And how do you bring that culture also, apart from these, from the actual functional aspects of it?
Yeah, tough one. I think in our case, it's See, I would say, apart from making sure that you're compliant with all the, regulatory rules, etc., it's also a little bit of a, with consumer brand, it's easy that, you put yourself in the customer shoes and you realize, okay, what if an app was asking me for XYZ? How would I see?
Right.
And so it's easier to have a, locus or a control center in your own mind regarding these things. And I think I would say at Hotstar, what policy that I have followed is that select or annoy the user for information only when you absolutely need to, and everything else try to implicitly deduce.
Yeah.
And now, thanks to all of the data tools that we have, it has become easier, right, with the power of ML and AI. So, like for example, we were at a decision point where we knew that, okay, location of a user is very important. Now, how do we get that location? One way was we get a GPS location. So that means every time you open the app, we'll get a notification saying you want to allow this app to use the location. The other way was using an IP-based location system, which would not give us your exact location, but a city, like a 50-kilometer radius city. And I think that is when we took a call that we are an OTT app. We don't need to know your GPS location. We're good as long as you tell us you're from Delhi or you're from Mumbai or you're from Ahmedabad or whatever, right? So those kind of calls you should take. And then I think a lot of the other behavior, my advice would be that you should look in the app. What is it that you can implicitly gather from the customer's behavior? To give you an example, our customers on the platform search for content before it has even released. Like, for example, Street 2 recently released. We get searches for Street 2 in millions, right? Now, we have this data until like almost 5 months back. This data was just lying there. No one said about, okay, they're like, we don't have it on our platform. We don't. What do we do about it? But then me and my team, we kind of double clicked on it, and we saw that, okay, let's try and map these searches to the location or the city, right? So maybe Street 2 might not be the right example, but for a movie like, say, Manjumal Boys, which is a Malayalam movie, we realized that 50% of our searches were coming from customers in Chennai, right? And the remaining 50% was split over other cities. So I was able to give this information to our marketing teams. And I was able to tell them, you know what, this is where the interest is coming from. Please use this and do the offline marketing accordingly, right? So I guess my over point here is that there are a lot of signals and behavior that your customer is also leaving on the platform, which is low-hanging fruit. So you don't have to ask them a bunch of things about how many kids you have and how many cars you own and all of that. You can just deduce now with data as to what they will possibly like.
Interesting. And I think, you also sort of mentioned an important use case, right? Which is sort of tying the whole digital world and the physical.
Yeah.
You spoke about looking at the searches before the movie released, and then sort of talking to your marketing team and say, hey, what can we do in the physical world to sort of, make use of this information, right? So how do you sort of look at this whole physical and digital combination?
Yeah.
And then your thoughts around some of those.
Yeah, I think somehow lately I've seen people look down upon the physical side of things, which I think is so wrong. Somehow people think, okay, digital means it's the new cool thing, and if you're doing anything physical, you're probably not cool. And yeah.
Interesting. And talking about this physical digital sort of thing, right? I think, as you rightly pointed out, the perception is that for digital is a lot more technology versus this is a lot more sort of old school, boring sort of a thing, right? It's been done before, and there's nothing new there.
Yeah.
Right. But how do you sort of look at technology, and then you have personalization, and then you have all of these digital and physical touch points? And any examples of how technology has sort of played a role in some of your personal learnings or your professional sort of learning? I mean, you mentioned about having those the ability to sort of experiment with different thumbnails, posters and things like that, right? But a little bit more double clicking on it, any more examples, which also has like a physical element to it.
I don't think about that. Maybe not sure about the physical element, but I'll tell you the personalization piece that plays into how you're interacting with the app, not just on the app, but even outside it, right? So we actually have a model which kind of scores you on just an example, on a scale of 1 to 10 on how much is your propensity to become a paying member or a subscribe. So if you're a free user on Hotstar, based on all of the watch behavior and whatever you do on the app, we kind of have the ML model says, okay, this person is at a 9, which means they're about to subscribe, or this person is at a 2, so they're not going to subscribe, they will continue being a free member. And now based on these scores, we actually, all of our notifications, our WhatsApp marketing, even something as small as the boldness of the subscribe button on the app, right? If you're a 9, that button will be very bold. If you're a 2, it's going to be somewhere in the background. You might even miss it. That is the level of information that is going into these marketing channels as well as personalization. So personalization just doesn't mean showing you the best for you kind of a homepage, but it also works into how we're making you upgrade, how we make you renew outside the platform as well as on the platform. So yeah, I think a little bit of maybe not physical, but like on and off platform example that I could share.
Amazing. And I think that sort of brings us to the end of this. I personally thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having on the show. And watch out for the next episode, folks. We're going to have another guest, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Isha.
I enjoyed this.
Thank you.